Welcome to the Lorecast. I'm Dr. Craig Chalkwist, and we're here to discuss the stories by which we deeply live. Here in the United States, we live in a strange time. A time when the corporations that we've depended on for so many things are openly supporting fascism. It's a pretty long list. Um, just a few examples from the list would be Ace Hardware, Arby's, Coors Beer, Buick Cadillac, Carl's Jr., Exxon, Walmart. There's many others. There are lists online that you can look at. Napa Auto Parts, Wonder Bread, Urban Outfitters, REI, and so on. And then accompanying this is a lot of ring kissing, and also news organizations that those of us who are paying attention have long known were problematic, now openly getting rid of people of color, any kind of policy that ensures fairness in the workplace, and on and on. MSNBC fired Joy Reid. CBS is self-censoring. CNN is pretending that all this is normal. It's disappointing. So in times like this, it's important to ask, what are some of the things that we can learn to help move us forward? So if we turn to some of the old stories, the old myths and folk tales and fairy tales, many of which were written to validate the underdog, especially folk tales and fairy tales, there's numerous examples in there of how to successfully resist this kind of moral cowardice, because that's really what it is. We have to call it what it is. When you're publicly succumbing to a bully, that's moral cowardice. Mark Twain called it out a lot in his time, too. So a question comes up, isn't this the time, especially in the old stories, where the heroes show up and get busy? And the answer to that is yes, it is. And there's examples of heroism in our day, too, not only in the U.S., but beyond it as well, because these trends toward authoritarianism and fascism are worldwide. So I want to focus on a different figure, though. There's surely room for heroic action and for supporting heroes, but heroes can be problematic. Sometimes they ride into town, make a big mess, and leave again without cleaning up after themselves. They sometimes do impulsive things. I like the way this is portrayed, incidentally, in some of the Avengers films, where the team of Avengers is actually brought to account for some of the chaos they've loosed on the world, even while trying to protect it. So heroes are questionable figures, sometimes needed, sometimes rightfully dreaded. But there's another figure I wanted to talk a bit about, and this comes from an ancient piece of Chinese lore, namely the I Ching, which usually is translated as the Book of Changes. It is a divination device, but much more than that. It's actually a book full of ancient wisdoms that have had enormous influence on Chinese culture down the millennia. It's an ancient book, one of the most ancient. And even if you don't know how to use it as an oracle, it's worth simply flipping through and looking at some of the advice in there, given by generations of sages. Now, in the I Ching, there's a figure who shows up a lot, who also occurs in Chinese philosophy of different kinds, including Confucian. And this is the figure of the junzi. And that's usually written in English characters as Junzi, junzi. It translates badly. If you look at the I Ching edited by Wilhelm and Baines, which is the one that a lot of Jungian people use, because Jung wrote a foreword to it, among other reasons. It's translated as superior man. And the original meaning of junzi actually is patriarchal. It refers to the son of a noble. But for our everyday use, I think we can push past some of these gender trappings and think of this figure not as a gentleman, not as a superior man, but as an exemplary person. And so to move this also out of the realm of nouns, I think what our time might be calling for, in addition to heroism and other things, is for us to be exemplary. So what does that mean? What does it mean to be exemplary in a difficult time? That's what I'd like to get into here. So one characteristic of the junzi is to be a person of integrity. And this means having a backbone. This means having a spine, instead of being what I think of as a moral windsock, where the values that you espouse publicly change with whoever's in charge, whatever administration is in charge. You just blow this way and that, completely spineless. The junzi, it doesn't do that. The exemplary person can take stands. And not necessarily with reactivity or rebellious attitudes, but sometimes a simple no, the way Gandhi used to talk about it. No, I won't cooperate with this. And there are certainly a lot of people doing that right now. They don't get as much press as other folks, but they are being exemplary. They actually have values that they believe in and stand for, instead of just the value of whatever will keep their skin intact. And some of them do more than holding up little signs in Congress or dressing in pink. They're actually willing to take risks. And incidentally, if you're in politics and you're not willing to take risks, you're in the wrong profession. You need courage to be in politics, and if you don't have it, get out and hand your chair over to somebody else. And I would say the same is true, depending on the context, for leadership as well. If you're the president of a school that has a vital emphasis on diversity and inclusion policies, and you give them up or let the board veto them away just because you're afraid of consequences, you shouldn't be in charge. To be exemplary, even in small ways, to say no, can be risky. You can lose your job over it. People are right now as I record this. Many years ago, I was hired right out of college to be a technical writer at a large insurance company. And I worked my way up a little bit to where I was writing contracts for large clients, large accounts. And I recall this one meeting with the insurance representative at the company I was working for and the insurance broker representing the client, which was a large group, a large employer. And they were going over the employee handbook. We were going over it in the meeting, and the broker said, "We want to take out this section here." And I looked and I said, "Those are the pregnancy benefits." And he said, "Yeah, we need to take them out." And I said, "Why?" And after hemming and hawing a little bit, they admitted that the claims experience had been bad for that client over the past year. In other words, they had a lot of claims, a lot of medical claims. And they felt that the claims experience would be better if women didn't know they had pregnancy benefits. So in those days, this was before a law was passed in California that it's actually illegal to take those benefits out, to not inform employees that they have them. This was before then. So I thought about it for a second and realized I had reached a transition point. So in my attempt to be exemplary, I said, "No, I won't take those benefits out. I'm taking an ethical stand against what you're suggesting." And the broker and the insurance rep both looked at me in astonishment. And I think it was the broker who said, "Well, we'll find somebody else to do it, you know." And I said, "Sure you will, but it won't be me." So he ended up having a conversation with my manager, who then called me into her office, and I thought I had lost my job. I didn't. I got lucky. And she actually said, I admire the stand that you're taking on this. We're going to assign somebody else to the case. So, in retrospect, there were other things I could have done to make an even bigger deal out of it, but I didn't. So that's a very small example. Sometimes you just have to say no, because it's wrong. I have also left employers more than once for the same reason. They wanted me to do things that I judged unethical, so I left. And some of those places are ones that have a very pleasant facade, a very pleasant persona, as Jung would say, and they advertise themselves as enlightened and into consciousness and this kind of thing. And you look under the hood and it's a real different story. So part of being a junzi is to try to have integrity even when it hurts. And it's hard sometimes. It takes a certain amount of stubbornness. And another example of being exemplary, or trying to be exemplary, aspiring to be exemplary, is to refuse to be inhumane to people. So I've been in the position as an administrator of having to lay people off. Not recently, but I have in the past. And I always insist on doing it personally. This brutality of you getting an email early in the morning saying that you don't have a job anymore, or being locked out of the system with no explanation. How callous and how cowardly that kind of dealing with people, that kind of cruelty really is. And it's being done to thousands of people right now. And incidentally, this new pattern of firing people and hiring them back, that's deliberate. That's basically telling those people and everybody else, this is what we can do to you if you don't toe the line. It's a deliberate, cruel attempt to intimidate. So the cruelty is the point. And so if we aspire to be exemplary in difficult times, one of the things that we can do is refuse to be cruel. And to support people who've been in those difficult situations. Give them moral support, emotional support, financial support, whatever it is that we can do for them that can help them. Other attributes of the junzi include love of learning, self-cultivation, being appropriate in difficult situations, being humane. Today we would say having empathy. Those are all qualities. And maybe we could expand a little bit on this and say that in difficult times, the exemplary person also stands by their own visions of how things could be better and support other people's as well. So there's a word I've been using that I got from my own fiction, lamplighters. And lamplighters are people who try to be exemplary by reimagining the stucknesses that we find ourselves in when our guiding stories get tangled up or taken too literally. They bring new possibilities, new ways of looking at things, sometimes tapping into the ancient wisdoms, the ancient stories. This is an aspect of making change in the world that's been severely neglected in our time. Making change has come to mean activism, which is surely necessary. Political reform, ditto. Things like that, tangible change. But we surely have a need for psychological support, for different outlooks, for using the imagination to go around obstacles when we can't go through them. So I've been doing, I started doing some free talks on this. What does it mean to be a lamplighter in dark times, to carry some light? And I'm going to continue those talks. If you follow me on social media, usually if you type in Dr. Chalkwist, I'll pop up. But um, right now I'm in TikTok for however long it lasts. Facebook, Lemonade. I'm looking forward. Oh, Blue Sky. Looking forward to some of these TikTok alternatives that are in the works. So you could look for me in there whenever those go up. But I've been presenting a lot about this. And I mentioned recently that an aspect of carrying light in the world is care, is to actually be unafraid to care for other people. I've studied philosophy, and a lot of the ethics principles and long discussions about what do you do in this situation and what do you do in that situation, they just make my eyes go out of focus. I'm not principle oriented. I'm not into logic and abstraction. What I am into, and it goes by the name of virtue ethics and philosophy, what it boils down to is being led by your heart. Any decent person walking down the street, if they see that someone is about to get hit by a car, will pull them out of the way. A colleague of mine recently talked about extended periods of job loss. And I said, well, I've got a house that's not super roomy, but there is room in here. You can live here for a while if you need to. Just caring enough to do something. That's part of being exemplary too. So, by the way, if you're interested in going further with this, there's all kinds of free stuff at my website about lamplighting if you go to chalkwist.com. I'm also doing a paid class because a lot of this won't pay for itself. And it's on training to be a lamp bearer in the world. It's called Introduction to Lamplighting. There's some details at my website and social media and in my newsletter too. If you go to my website, you can sign up for my newsletter. I don't spam people, by the way. So there's a class right now that people are signing up for on lamplighting, and I'm bringing in all kinds of stuff, philosophy and depth psychology and mythology and storytelling and imagination studies and lots of practices. So that's available too. But I think, as we all know, you don't need any special training to show up trying to be a positive force in a world that's gone crazy. And quietly insisting on sane points of view, namely those that don't hurt other people, that don't contribute to the chaos that's going on, that don't worship authority figures. So next to the hero, I would put the quiet figure of the junzi, the exemplary person, not quite a sage. In Chinese philosophy, a sage was almost unreachable. You were almost more than human if you became a sage. So I like it that they kind of position it like this. We all want to be sages, but if you can't be a sage, be a junzi. Or at least try to be. I like that. We can all do better because we've all fallen short. And maybe that's another part of the path to trying to be exemplary, is to be clear that you fall short, I fall short, and to find ways to try to repair that and forgive ourselves and move on so that we can do better next time. Surely that's part of the journey too. Or at least it should be. If you're spending huge portions of your life trying to make up for something that you did, trying to pay off a debt, then maybe the consideration should float somewhere in your awareness that the debt really isn't to whoever got injured. It's really the debt to you. And maybe you should let yourself off the hook for it. In any case, for everybody, no matter what you've done, there are abundant opportunities to show up better, to care even when it's inconvenient to say no when it's risky, to say yes when it's risky, to support the people who are most vulnerable, and maybe tell a story or two to strengthen people's spirits and feed their souls and get a little aliveness and light into their hearts. Surely we could use some of that these days as well. As things continue to descend, there can be those of us who carry the lamps, who light up our little corner of the world. That is definitely good work we shouldn't forget about. Thank you.